Welcome to Food for Thought, the place to explore, celebrate, and manifest a life motivated and defined by unconditional compassion and optimal wellness. My name is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau, and I'm your host. My work is dedicated to empowering people to live according to their own values of compassion and wellness. You can learn more about who I am and what I do by visiting my website, joyfulvegan.com. You can also join the thousands whose lives have been changed by the 30-Day Vegan Challenge and get yourself on board today at 30dayveganchallenge.com. You can get the book, or you can get the online program, or you can get both for a discount. There are a lot of fun giveaways going on in the online program now. Every month there are exclusive videos, exclusive content, live Q&As with me. So check out 30dayveganchallenge.com. And for all you Canadians who have been patiently waiting, the book, The 30-Day Vegan Challenge, is now being sold at amazon.ca. Today's topic is part 2 of stage 7, communication, finding your voice, owning your values without apology. Thanks everyone also for writing your review of the 30-Day Vegan Challenge at amazon.com or .ca. You can send a link to your review on Amazon to contact@joyfulvegan.com, and we're going to put you in a drawing for a free subscription to the 30-Day Vegan Challenge online program. And you can give that away. You can use it for yourself, whatever you like, but I'll announce the winner in the next podcast episode. So write a review on Amazon, send that review, the link to the review, to contact@joyfulvegan.com, and we'll put you in the drawing for a free subscription to the online program. Today's episode is brought to you by Nature's Food and the American Anti-Vivisection Society. Stay tuned for more about Nature's Food and a fantastic offer. So you can check out their high-quality, vegan, organic, soy-free, gluten-free, non-GMO protein powders. So we'll come back to them. The American Anti-Vivisection Society at aavs.org is one of the oldest animal protection organizations in the United States, ending the use of animals in science through education, advocacy, and the development of alternative methods. They are instrumental behind making sure that your tax dollars don't contribute to research that benefits the meat industry. Because right now they do via the U.S. Meat Animal Research Center, but you didn't even know that existed. Its sole aim is to minimize costs and maximize profits for the meat industry. And a New York Times investigation revealed shocking animal cruelty and neglect. You can read that article at aavs.org/meat. This takes place because there is no federal law protecting animals used in agriculture research. The Animal Welfare Act specifically excludes cows, pigs, and sheep from coverage when used in agriculture research. Only Congress can stop such horrific animal suffering. In response to this cruelty, a bipartisan bill was introduced in Congress. It's called the Animal Welfare in Agricultural Research Endeavors. AWARE is what the acronym is. It's the AWARE Act, and it will amend the Animal Welfare Act to include protection for animals used in agriculture research at federal labs. So contact your legislators today and ask them to support the AWARE Act. The bill is steadily gaining support in both the House and the Senate. Only Congress can stop this, and they need to hear from you. So go to aavs.org/meet, find your legislators and ask them, urge them to support the AWARE Act. Thanks also to listeners who are supporting this podcast and other content. Listener sponsorships are low, so get out there if you are confident this work is having an impact in the world, and I can assure you it is. I urge you to support it. Just go to joyfulvegan.com and you can click on the Patreon button to become a monthly supporter or the one-time donation button to become a one-time supporter. Thank you for your support. So I hope you enjoyed part 1 of stage 7, everybody. 10 strategies for effective communication. In parts 1 and 2, we are returning to our 10 stages, what happens when you stop eating animals, and I encourage you to listen to the episode called From Consumption to Compassion, the 10 stages we go through when we stop eating animals, to understand the context of these stages. And then you can go ahead and listen to the individual episodes, stages 1 through 6, and now we have 7 with the end of this part 2 episode. In stage 7, communication, finding your voice, speaking your values without apology, this is the stage where you begin to feel more comfortable in your own vegan skin. You begin to find your vegan voice. You begin to really learn how to speak to people who push back when you tell them that you're vegan, or who are hostile or passive aggressive or disrespectful or just curious, really, I mean, it's a matter of finding your voice to be able to speak your truth. You learn the importance of being unapologetic about living compassionately and healthfully, and you learn effective communication skills to be the best ambassador of compassion and wellness. As I've mentioned before, and I mentioned it in part 1, I have talked about the importance of communication often over the years. And you can go to joyfulvegan.com under podcasts and you can find the SoundCloud account. That's where I have all of these audio files. And you can find a playlist that features all of the episodes in which I've talked about communication strategies. So I encourage you to check that out, because this is really a summary of all the things I've been talking about for years. And frankly, I could probably do another 10 strategies, but I think this really covers everything we've talked about before. Now, to recap what we talked about in part 1, the first 5 strategies of our 10 strategies for effective compassionate communication are: number 1, create intention. Number 2, practice active listening. Number 3, ask questions. Number 4, have a sense of humor. And number 5, know where you end and another person begins. And now let's continue with number 6, find common ground. It's so easy to immediately stereotype someone and put them in a box called not me or other than me, and presume we know what they're thinking. We presume we know how they think or what their opinions would be. And personally, I'm a little allergic to making presumptions and assumptions about people. Just because someone doesn't check off the boxes that I might check off doesn't mean that they're an alien species who can't relate to who I am and what I care about. I find all the ways in which we compartmentalize each other to be potentially damaging to ourselves, to each other, and to the big picture. If you identify as a liberal, progressive, vegan, feminist, Democrat, or whatever, you may think anyone who's a conservative, Republican, religious meat eater as far on the other side of the spectrum from you. And yet, I bet you could find things that you would agree on. I am certain of it. And that's what I suggest we do in strategy number 6. Find common ground. Find a place where you can both come together. Perhaps you're talking to someone and you find they check all the boxes that you don't check, right? And you're tempted to write them off as different, but worse than that, we don't really just say different is okay. We usually say different is worse. And so we might just assume they're intolerant or insensitive or whatever other judgments we make. But I bet you could find something that you're both on the same page about. Maybe you both have dogs. Maybe you both have cats. Maybe you both have children. Maybe you both hate broccoli, or you both love blueberry pancakes. There's always something. And I suggest you start there. And then the things you disagree on doesn't mean you have to draw a line around yourself and say, sorry, we just have different viewpoints and I can't talk to you. Like, you're not me and you don't believe what I believe, so I can't talk to you. Rather, you can agree to disagree in some areas. If you're disagreeing or arguing with someone, and I don't mean full out fighting, I mean, arguing, having a debate, you can say, I hear what you're saying, but I disagree. Or I can agree with you about that. We're definitely on the same page there, but I don't agree with you over there. Learning how to politely and confidently say, I disagree is very powerful. I think we're used to thinking in terms of I'm right, you're wrong, but no one reacts well to being told they're wrong. No one reacts well to someone acting like they're righteous, right? So there's nothing to react to, though, when you say, I disagree. That person can't say, well, you're wrong to disagree, right? I mean, you can't say that. David and I have a joke. It's a joke. Sometimes we say, no, you can have a wrong opinion. It's fine. It's a joke, right? Because of course, an opinion is an opinion. That's the point. And so there's nothing to react to when you say, I disagree. You're not saying that person's wrong. You're not saying I'm right. You're just saying, I don't share that opinion. And by the way, I do encourage you to check out the episode called Disagreement is Not Disrespect for even more on this topic. I'm telling you, I've talked about this a number of times. Other ways you can say this is, it seems we have different points of view, or I've drawn different conclusions, or I've made different observations, or, while I still think we have different approaches, I really understand yours a little better now. So thank you for sharing that with me. So it's really, again, it's kind of also adhering to the principle of knowing where you end and another person begins. You can take in their opinion without judging it. You can hear their opinion without reacting to it. It's really powerful. I mean, I've always loved this idea of, and for me, it's kind of a visualization of a particular stance that we've seen in, I don't know, just in people I admire, in leaders I admire, where their stance is very open, meaning they can take in what's being given to them without being rattled by it. Doesn't mean we're not human and won't make mistakes, and doesn't mean that we're perfect at this, but it's what I aspire to, is actually just kind of hearing it without judgment and taking it in without reaction. And it's very powerful, and I aspire to that. So we can practice that. It's so civil and it's so adult. And I think we can learn to say, I disagree. I think it's a very powerful statement rather than you're wrong, I'm right. A few other things to say about this. While we may disagree with their principles, we can try and separate the principles from the person. I tend to think we're complex creatures with many viewpoints. We can hold many viewpoints at the same time, and we have changing viewpoints. But I think at our core, we're good people, and even people with whom you disagree on principle. So I think avoiding ad hominem attacks, where you attack the person and not the principle, is always a good strategy. It's a little like hating the crime but not the criminal. And I've talked about this in various episodes, particularly those about hunters. That episode, I know, really moved a lot of people, how to talk to hunters or anyone else with whom you disagree. It's so easy for those of us who are animal activists to demonize hunters, right? I mean, we look at them as being really opposite ends of the spectrum, and it's easy to put them in a box called evil. But as I said before, I have some friends whose fathers or uncles hunt. Can you imagine me saying to them, wow, your father's evil, huh? He's a hunter. My friend would say, no, my father's not evil. He's a really good person with a big heart. I don't know how he's able to hunt, and I have a really hard time with that aspect of what he does. But he's a good father, and he's a good husband, and he's a good friend, and I love him. I just wish he didn't do that one thing. It doesn't feel congruent with the rest of who he is. You see what I mean? It's really understanding that there are many facets to the people in our lives. Finally, in searching for common ground, just be open. You may learn from the person you think you have nothing in common with. Those are always the most wonderful surprises, but it's only going to happen if we're open. So you can still stay true to yourself, and you can still stay true to your beliefs without attacking or belittling someone else, and still stand firm and confident in those beliefs. And that actually brings us to the next strategy. Number 7 is have courage and confidence in your convictions. As much as we can agree to disagree with someone, so a conversation doesn't turn into World War III, I'm not saying we be so self-effacing as not to stand up for what we know to be right and true. We've all been in scenarios when someone passes along misinformation or myths that we might not have the exact rebuttal for. You may not be able to quote a specific scientific paper or citation from a health journal, and you wind up feeling like you lost the argument or you lost the upper hand. Now, if you look at every conversation as a battle, I suppose that's how it would feel. But if you're committed to planting seeds rather than winning an argument, then a shift in perspective will help. And I think one of the things that works really well is being honest, being confident, and being humble. So one of the ways to do that, I really do think, is to say, I don't agree. But if it's something where they throw out something that sounds like a fact, you might say, well, I haven't read that particular article about that one person who didn't feel well eating a plant-based diet, so I can't speak to it specifically. But I do know that you'd be hard-pressed to find a doctor who tells their patients to cut back on the number of vegetables they're eating and to increase their consumption of animal products. And the research bears this out. Now, you can say that, right? You can just say some kind of general response in terms of what you know to be true about the healthfulness of eating plant-based. You can also say, I can't speak to that particular study or article because I haven't read it, but I know that I've never felt better. And I say this because if they're using just one person's anecdotal story, right? Let's say they're talking about, I heard about this woman. Did you read that article about that woman who got really sick on a vegan diet, right? They're using one person's anecdotal story to draw a conclusion about a plant-based diet. And I would point that out to them. That's something really important to point out because we know millions of people thrive. So I think it's really important to point out, again, without getting into the specifics, without quoting studies, without knowing that particular study or article, whatever they're talking about, we can say something like, that's one person's story. And if you want an example of another person's story, I can give you my one story. My story is that I've never felt better since becoming vegan. So your own anecdotal story isn't any less valid than that person's whatever the article they might be quoting, right? So be confident that you can say, well, I've never felt better. I don't know what that one person's experience was. Maybe they weren't making healthful food choices. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you can still feel confident without feeling like you have to go and read that article or read that study and rebut it. Or someone might say something, like, all I know is I think animal testing is necessary because of all the diseases we've cured because of it. My wife had breast cancer, and if testing on animals led the experts to know how to help her, then I am all for it. Now, whether or not this is true, you might feel like, oh God, I have no idea how to speak to whether or not animal testing helped in breast cancer research or hurt it, right? I can't speak to the specifics, but you don't have to know all the details of the history of vivisection to respond, or not even the history, but the details in order to respond. And because this is very emotional for the person saying it, and this often comes up with different conversations with people, a lot of emotion, right? You also want to be sensitive to his experience and the experience of his wife. So utilizing courage and confidence, you might say, I really understand why you would say that, but luckily it's not a choice between animal testing and our loved ones, right? I mean, we can say something general like that. We can say, look, we're resourceful creatures, and I'm confident that we will come up with better and more effective and more sophisticated methods for cures and treatments that don't involve any suffering. And frankly, that may have been what also helped your wife, right? So we can say these general responses about these topics because that's what we know to be true, rather than feel that we have to speak to the details. So what I'm suggesting is that even if we know very little about the facts around an issue that someone brings up, it doesn't mean you still can't respond with confidence and conviction. Someone might say, well, I heard soy was really bad for you. And you can utilize one of our other strategies, which is asking questions by saying, oh, in what way did you hear it was bad? Right? Hold them accountable. Ask a question that would make them accountable for what they're saying. They'll probably say, I don't know, something about estrogen and puberty, or something about stopping kids from growing properly, or I don't know, something about men growing breasts, right? They'll probably say something where there's nothing behind it. And this is exactly how this stuff gets spread. So you can speak to all of the specifics you know about soy, starting with my vegan point of view videos on soy called The Truth About Soy. It's a bean. Okay. So you can speak to the specifics. Or if it's not a topic you know the specifics about or you've never heard of, you can say, I don't think I've ever heard that. That doesn't sound very likely, or that's not true, right? The point is, we don't have to be afraid to disagree. We can disagree respectfully, but we can also be confident in our own knowledge. We can be confident in what we do know, because your voice and your opinion matters as well. Number 8, clarify what you're hearing. So often we respond to something that's not even being said, right? That's why so many arguments resort to someone declaring, that's not what I said. That's not what I didn't even say that, right? I mean, we've all had arguments like that, right? And that's not what I said. We often hear what we want to hear, what we expect to hear, and what we're piecing together in our own minds, if we're even listening properly. Go back to part 1. So instead of just reacting to what you think you heard, even if you pride yourself on being a good listener, repeat back what you think you heard. This is especially helpful if you're talking about something a little, deeper, right? I mean, if you're having an argument with someone about anything at all, you might not do this every single time you're having a conversation, but when it's something where you really need to be heard or you really need to know what they're saying, instead of reacting, just repeat back what you think you heard. You can say something like, what I hear you saying is X. And either they're going to say, no, that's not what I said. And you can say, okay, well, tell me again so I understand. And you would say, so what I'm hearing you say is X. And when you can get to the point where they go, yes, that's what I'm saying, then you can say, okay, so great, I understand you. And so here's what I have to say, right? Whatever, however you segue into then your answer. Okay, great. Glad I understand. And then respond accordingly. The point is that through clarification, you respond to what's being said rather than to what you think you're hearing. And it gives the person you're talking to the opportunity to own what they're saying, right? To be accountable. And turning the tables, it also gives you the tools to be able to clarify what you're saying as well. So practice. I want to make sure we're on the same page here. What I hear you saying is X. Do I have that right? Or if what you're saying is being misconstrued, you can say, I fear I may have been unclear. What I'm saying is X. Is that what you hear? right? So you can take responsibility for clearly hearing, saying, and understanding what's being communicated. Now, you might be thinking right now, like, oh my God, that's going to take forever before we even get to the point of what we're trying to convey. And of course, I'm illustrating this, and it sounds much more dramatic than I think it is in reality. And I've done this a number of times myself. But just think about how much time we waste arguing about things that weren't even said. So I guarantee you this will actually save you time and save you frustration and save a relationship potentially. So I've got more helpful strategies for you, but I need to give a shout out to the folks making this podcast possible. As I said, today's episode is brought to you by Nature's Food. You know, one of the most common questions we vegans are asked is, where do you get your protein? Nature's Food is the answer to that question. Literally. Nature's Food brand products. Iovate's Nature's Food brand products. It's a new premium vegan brand available exclusively at GNC. All of their products are vegan friendly, non-GMO, free of dairy, free of soy, free of gluten, and made from high quality, hand selected ingredients that contain no artificial flavors, sweeteners, or preservatives. I've personally been enjoying the organic protein powder in my smoothies. It comes in vanilla. It even comes in chocolate, which delivers 18 grams of 100% plant-based protein. Nature's Food organic protein, this is USDA organic protein, features a superior 100% brown rice protein, making it ideal for supporting lean muscle, strength, and recovery. Perfect for active lifestyles like mine. There's also a plant-based fit protein powder and an all-in-one meal, which is a perfect boost choice when you are on the go, and so many of us are these days. So just look for the green Nature's Food logo on the blue and white packaging at your local GNC. There'll be a photo of it in the show notes for today's episode at joyfulvegan.com, and there'll be a link to gnc.com. You can go there right now, gnc.com, and search for Nature's Food protein powder and use the promo code 26381 to get $5 off any Nature's Food product, which is pretty awesome. So go to gnc.com, search for Nature's Food brand, and get $5 off. It's what's inside that counts. So check out Nature's Food products for yourself, and you will see why. So returning to our 10 strategies, number 9, speak from the I. Someone recently asked me in a YouTube comment why in some of my videos, I mean, they were obviously noticing it in my videos, I speak in terms of we or I. So for instance, when I say, when we buy animal products, we're supporting a violent system. Now, clearly, I'm not buying animal products, but if you listen to all of my years of podcasts and videos, you will notice that I rarely use the word you, and don't try and catch me out and find episodes in which I do, but I really make an effort. It comes pretty naturally to me because when we use the word you versus I or we, it really has a different effect. It's a very intentional choice I make when I'm communicating this information or my truth. I want people to relate to me. I don't want them to feel dictated to. And I'm a bit averse to using phrases like, when you buy animal products, you're supporting a violent system, right? Hear the difference? When you buy animal products, you're supporting a violent system. It's very accusatory. It might be true, but it's just so much more effective to say, when we buy animal products, we're supporting a violent system. That's why I always talk about remembering your story. So when we talk to people, we can say things like, when I was buying animal products, I realized I was contributing to and supporting a violent system that I didn't want to be a part of. That's so different than, when you buy animal products, you're supporting violence. Like, people just don't react well to that. It's very off-putting. I think people react very defensively to it. So I very much advocate for speaking from the I. The listener is much more likely to hear what you have to say when they don't feel like you're criticizing them or chastising them or telling them what to do or telling them what not to do. I can guarantee you will have a better chance of being heard and having a dialogue than if you say, don't you know animals are being tortured because of you, right? Why aren't you living according to your values? Like, why aren't you doing that? I guarantee you, if you speak from, I just said you, if we speak from the I and the we, it really has a huge impact and makes a big difference. Number 10, I have said this before, and I will say it again, do not have philosophical debates online. I have an entire podcast episode on this topic called Advocating for Animals in Social Media. and I talk about this in a number of other episodes, the suggestions apply even if it's not animals you're advocating for, if it's just veganism or anything. I am honestly shocked when I see arguments take place on someone's Facebook page or an online article or in the comments below an article or on a YouTube video. I think there are so many better ways to spend our time. And though I think all the social media channels we now have available to us in order to connect with each other and share information, they're fantastic. I take advantage of them. I love them. I also think we need to learn new ways of interacting with each other, ways we've never had to before. This is all new for us. So I think in some ways we're learning social etiquette and communication in an entirely different way. We're kind of relearning or, learning in this new way. One of the reasons it's such a bad idea to argue online is you can't implement the strategies I've been talking about for 2 episodes. You can't look at someone. You can't gauge their tone. You can't use body language to express yourself or view someone else's body language to understand what's really being said. You can't easily ask questions back without the questions perhaps being taken the wrong way. So there are so many reasons why it's just not a good idea. Whenever you see something that might boil your blood or just make you want to react, right? Just a comment someone makes or an article. That doesn't mean there isn't a place for making a comment on an article if you want a particular perspective to be voiced. I get that. I've left comments. Rarely, because once I do, then the attackers just come. It's like the vultures, and the vultures do come down when there's carrion. So they just see you and they see some kind of vulnerability and they just attack. And I just don't like it. So I just don't even reply because I don't feel like it's really necessarily being heard. That doesn't mean I don't support writing letters to the editor and that kind of thing. I definitely think we need to get our voice out there. I believe that. But when you see something that makes you want to just react, and this is the case in any situation in our lives, when you feel your blood boil, when you want to react, stop. Probably one of the great lessons I have learned in my life is to not react when I want to react. Taking time, maybe even 24 hours, maybe an hour, but I always make a better decision and I always have a much better response when I stop and don't react. And I don't mean there aren't, right back to someone really quickly, that kind of, I'm talking about when you want to react because you're emotional, don't react. That's the time to go, okay, something's going on here. Something's coming up for me. I need to take a breath. I need to step back. I need to figure out why this is so upsetting for me. And then I'll come back to it, And when it comes to these comments, and I'm not even going to say conversations online, when it comes to this back and forth online that I see, ask yourself if there is a better, more productive way for you to spend your time. And I bet the answer is yes. In all forms of communication, whether I'm talking to someone in person or on the phone or in a Skype call or online, I really try to tune into how I'm internally reacting. I'm a very emotional person. I'm a very sensitive person. So, I react very strongly to things. So this is something I have practiced in my own life. If I find myself getting stressed or angry or defensive or reactive, I really try and check in and see what's going on because usually something's happening. And the best thing to do is I can go process it by myself and I can go process it with someone I care about. But you can't take back what you've said in anger. You can't take back what you've said in just heightened emotion. So it's always better to step back and certainly not reply online because you can't take it back. As I always say, my intention is to have a dialogue, not win an argument. But that doesn't mean I don't stand up for what I believe in. You can do both. You can be a voice for animals, a voice for compassion, speak truth to your ethics, and you can do so unapologetically, respectfully, productively, joyfully, compassionately, and effectively. Share your own strategies over at this episode's page at joyfulvegan.com. And while you're over there, be sure to sign up for the weekly newsletter. I have so many wonderful things happening and I want to share them with you. And the best way to hear about them is through the weekly newsletter. You will notice some changes over at joyfulvegan.com. I'm constantly improving the website. And while you're over there, leave a comment, drop me a line, become a supporter, and take a look at some of the new content I'm sure wasn't there last time you visited. Thank you as always for listening. Thank you as always for subscribing. subscribing and supporting and sharing this podcast. Thank you to our sponsor, the American Anti-Vivisection Society at aavs.org. Get thee over to aavs.org and get involved. Find your legislator, write them a letter, ask them to support the AWARE Act. Share this with your friends and followers. Thanks also to our sponsor, Nature's Food. With their organic, vegan, non-GMO products, you get the added nutrition you want to support your busy lifestyle. Nature's Food is perfect for that. And remember, because you're a dedicated listener, you can go to gnc.com and use the promo code 26381 to save $5 on any Nature's Food product. That's all I've got, folks, for the animals. This is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for listening.